Why hello there friends, it's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. Welcome to my August reading wrap up. I'm finally feeling ready to wrap up the summer. I know for some people, like the beginning of August is when you enter autumn mode, but I feel like I have to wait till September to really be in the mood for pumpkins and fall coziness. I mean, my sunflowers are only just now coming into bloom, like just in the nick of time for the end of summer. I had such bad luck with the seeds this year. I sowed like batches of seeds, I think 3 or 4 times. Finally, the last batch has come up, so it looks like I'll have some lovely blooms before we move into fall. Before we get into the August reads though, I did want to just let you all know about a very exciting live stream that will be happening on my channel this Friday, September 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern. Kate Howe and Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space will both be joining me, and we'll be doing a full summer reading wrap up talking about our favorite reads of the summer. You may recall at the beginning of the summer, I did a live stream over on Kate Howe's channel. It was a summer reading plans and dreams live stream, and it was just so much fun to chat with them and hear about their TBR lists. So unfortunately, Anne was not able to join us, but Kate and Christy will be joining me for the live stream on my channel this Friday, and we're going to sum up how the summer reading actually went, what our favorites were. We're going to take a look back at the TBR list and see what we got to and what we didn't. Make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to see you this Friday, and the replay will be available on my channel afterwards if you can't make it during the live stream itself. So if you've been watching my reading vlogs this year, you'll have heard me talk about my reread of the Little House on the Prairie series. I had made it up to the long winter, and initially I thought maybe I should wait to read this during winter. I'm really glad I didn't. This is truly a long, long winter and a really difficult book. Honestly, all of the Little House on the Prairie books, there are such hardships that Laura and her family face, but they face it with such grace and strength and courage, and it's just really inspiring. This, though, would be so depressing to read if it was actually cold outside, though. Here's the synopsis from the dust jacket. Indian Warning said the winter of 1880 to 81 would be a hard one in the Dakota Territory. So Pa moved his family from the claim into town. Blizzards soon snowed the little town under, cutting off all supplies from the outside. Laura and Mary couldn't even go to school. Almanzo Wilder makes his first appearance in this book, but it truly is. I think it's like October to May that they are basically snowed up, and they're grateful to be in town because at least when the blizzards kind of subside a bit, they can maybe see some of their neighbors or get news or exchange supplies. But for most of the time, they are cooped up in this little house, just trying to keep their spirits up, trying to get enough fuel and enough food to get them through. We get to see the songs that they sing and the books that they read to try to comfort themselves. But you do also just feel the listlessness and the frustration. The way she describes the blizzard is so evocative. You feel like you're there, trapped in the house. In this passage, Pa is reading to them from a book. Laura tried to listen, but she felt stupid and numb. Pa's voice slid away into the ceaseless noises of the storm. She felt that the blizzard must stop before she could do anything, before she could even listen or think, but it would never stop. It had been blowing forever. Although at another point, Pa stands up and shakes his fist and says, "Howl, blast you, howl," he shouted. "We're all here safe. You can't get at us. You've tried all winter, but we'll beat you yet. We'll be right here when spring comes." "Charles, Charles," Ma said soothingly. "It is only a blizzard. We're used to them." Pa dropped back in his chair. After a minute, he said, "That was foolish, Caroline. Seemed for a minute like that wind was something alive trying to get at us." The way she almost personifies the blizzard is quite something. At one point, Pa starts playing this eerie melody on the violin, and Laura says, "What is that?" And he says he was trying to follow the eerie melody of the blizzard. Just once again, marveling at and inspired by the tenacity and grit of the Ingalls family. It makes you realize that you have a lot more in you than you might have guessed. You have a lot more patience in you than what you maybe would like to have to use. But when you're in a situation that calls on that patience and fortitude, it's good to know that it will be there and it will see you through a long winter. I did get to some P.G. Wodehouse this summer. I reread Carry On, Jeeves. This is a collection of short stories. It does have Bertie, Wooster, and Jeeves's very first meeting in the story Jeeves Takes Charge. And the last story in here, Bertie Changes His Mind, is very unique because it's told from the perspective of Jeeves. So some really good stories in here. Wodehouse's just general plot rarely changes. It's usually an impecunious young man who is dependent on a rich relative who has fallen in love with a girl but can't get married without the relative's approval. And so Bertie and Jeeves step in with some harebrained scheme. It was so funny rereading the first story, Jeeves Takes Charge, because in this one, Bertie Wooster himself is dependent on a rich uncle. Like, he doesn't have his fortune yet. And I don't think we hear about that uncle again. It's so funny the way Wodehouse's characters and plots, like, oftentimes he mentions a plot in another book, but his timeline is very vague. And I think if you sat down and try to like map it all out, like some of it fits and some of it doesn't really. You're not meant to think too hard with Wodehouse. You're just meant to laugh and enjoy. It's just such a fun escape. Another fun escape this summer was Peter and Paul by Susan Scarlett. I have read Susan Scarlett before. I read a bunch of her novels last year, and I thought I'd read all of them, but then I was looking on Amazon, and there were actually some for Kindle that I had not yet downloaded. Peter and Paul actually was not necessarily one of my favorites. I didn't love the hero and heroine, especially having some of the other Susan Scarletts to compare it to. I'd say Sally Ann or Clothes Pegs or 10-Way Street or The Man in the Dark. I enjoyed all of those more than Peter and Paul. But Susan Scarlett books are all a little bit more fluffy romances. I feel like there's often a fashion element, and we do get that in Peter and Paul. There's a fashion designer. One of the girls ends up becoming a model, and the other is just working in the fashion atelier. So you get to kind of see all the different departments, and that's a really fun part of it. Now, I'm very annoyed with myself because I don't know what happened to my copy of this next book, and I was about like halfway through it and enjoying it so much, so I need to find it. Also, I don't have it, so I can't like read my quotations, which I've been marking, but it is Linnets and Valerians by Elizabeth Goudge. This is one of Elizabeth Goudge's children's books, which it's my first time reading this one. I adore Goudge, though. There's all of Goudge's adult novels, which are just amazing. And Linnets and Valerians was so charming. It's about 4 little children who went to live with their grandmother, who is very strict, and they ran away. And luckily, they're able to run away to their uncle, who is a retired schoolmaster and definitely a bit of a curmudgeon. And it's just so charming and heartwarming. Goudge is such a beautiful writer. I feel like Elizabeth Goudge, even in her children's books, does a great job combining kind of depth and coziness. She does sometimes go overboard on the description, I think, but her writing on the whole is totally worth it. But you'll have to wait till my next reading vlog for me to give you some samples of it. I have made some more progress in Anna Karenina. I am just about through book 2, although I'm realizing that I should probably do better than 1 book a month, because at this rate, I'm not going to be finishing it until 2024. But I am enjoying the writing. It's a fascinating portrait of Russian high society, but of course also so many universal things that you can relate to and that are true of any society and any group of people. I thought it was interesting, this one party that Tolstoy describes, and how conversation kind of ebbs and flows. In both groups, conversation wavered, as it always does, for the first few minutes, broken up by meetings, greetings, offers of tea, and, as it were, feeling about for something to rest upon. She's exceptionally good as an actress. One can see she's studied Kaulbach. This guy gets shut down. "Oh, please don't let us talk about Nilsson. No one can possibly say anything new about her," says Princess Miakia. Princess Miakia, noted for her simplicity and the roughness of her manners, was nicknamed Enfant Terrible. 3 people have used that very phrase about Kaulbach to me today already, just as though they had made a compact about it, and I can't see why they liked that remark so. The conversation was cut short by this observation, and a new subject had to be thought of again. "Do tell me something amusing, but not spiteful," said the ambassador's wife. She addressed the attaché, who was at a loss now what to begin upon. "They say that that's a difficult task, that nothing's amusing that isn't spiteful," he began with a smile. The conversation began amiably, but just because it was too amiable, it came to a stop again. They had to have recourse to the sure, never-failing topic, gossip. Later, everyone had something to say in censure or ridicule of the luckless Madame Maltisheva, and the conversation crackled merrily like a burning faggot stick. That Princess Miakia, though, sounds pretty great. The sensation produced by Princess Miakia's speeches was always unique, and the secret of the sensation she produced lay in the fact that though she spoke not always appropriately, as now, she said simple things with some sense in them. In the society in which she lived, such plain statements produced the effect of the wittiest epigram. Princess Miakia could never see why it had that effect, but she knew it had and took advantage of it. I've been kind of going back and forth between the audiobook and the ebook. But definitely steady progress, hoping to make some more progress. One book that I did finish this month was Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc by Mark Twain. This is our book club pick for this month. We're actually going to be discussing it this Saturday, September 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, my book club, I have an email list. So I email out the link to our Google Meet video chat before the meeting. If you'd like to be added to the list, you can just send me an email, emma@bookishprincess.com. Yeah, so Saturday, September 2nd at 1 p.m. p.m. Eastern. But yes, I'm really excited to discuss it with all of you guys. I'm so glad that I got to this. When I heard about this book, I just was so intrigued. One, because I don't know a lot about St. Joan of Arc, and two, it just seemed surprising that Mark Twain was interested in this topic. He spent years and years researching it, and of course Mark Twain is pretty sarcastic. He was not a Christian. I think he claimed to be an atheist, but he definitely treats this topic and St. Joan of Arc's life very reverently. He just found her very inspiring. It is pretty crazy when you read about and really think about what she accomplished. It almost seems like a fairy tale. There was this 100 Years' War that had been going on between France and England, and this young 16-year-old girl manages to unite the French, who are losing at that point. Like, it seems like England has basically won. Joan of Arc calls the king of France the Dauphin because he hasn't actually been crowned. He's the son of the king. And she has these voices who speak to her and tell her that she needs to go to the Dauphin, go to the king, and end the siege of Orleans, and then crown the king of France. And incredibly, she does both of these things. But there are many, many obstacles along the way, many trials, both figurative and literal. The people of her day were very skeptical. This 16-year-old peasant girl thinks that she's going to be the one to rally the troops and defeat the English forces when for, you know, all these years and years and years, the best generals and leaders of France have not been able to do this. But she has faith in her voices. She identifies the three as St. Michael the Archangel, St. Catherine, and St. Marguerite, St. Margaret. Now I want to go and learn more about St. Catherine and St. Margaret as well. But she trusts God, even though he's given her this impossible task. When she finally meets the king, which honestly is kind of a miracle, just her getting to that point, but the king is very hesitant, and he has a group of scholars and bishops basically test her, because everyone is wondering if she's inspired by God or if she's inspired by the devil. And so Joan of Arc goes through this long, long trial where she is thoroughly examined, and finally the bishops and leaders come back and say, yes, we believe she's inspired by God. And so then she is made the general, and she does rally the troops, and yet there's still constantly so much intrigue at the court and like doubt from the people around her that there's so much she has to deal with. Joan of Arc never doubts her mission though, and she's constantly trying to cut through all this delay. And then of course at the end, I mean, I don't think you need a spoiler warning for Joan of Arc's life, but there it is in case you do. She gets captured. And of course, the English can't just kill her, because what they really want to kill is her reputation and how, you know, she's become symbolic of France at that point. So they drag her through another trial, which is basically completely illegal. All these corrupt, terrible bishops just twisting everything she has to say. And then she is condemned and burned at the stake. But then about 20 years after her death, there is yet another trial where basically her name is cleared. This personal recollections is a mix of fact and fiction, and it's written by one of her good friends who came with her from her village, and he is present at all of these different trials, and so really fills you in. The trials and like the basic facts, like I said, I believe are true, although I do want to do some more research and learn more about her life. But I think Mark Twain did a beautiful job explaining what she meant to the people of France and how she inspired everyone, and clearly how she inspired him. One of my favorite characters was Paladin, and he is one of the kind of yokels from her village. The narrator is not the only one from her village. Paladin and a couple others, two of her brothers, go with her and accompany her throughout her life and throughout the battles. But Paladin is this bombastic, outrageous storyteller who like is kind of a coward but actually does love Joan, and Joan of Arc really does inspire him and give him this confidence. And I don't know if this is a real life spoiler or just a book spoiler, because I don't know if Paladin was a real person, but Joan of Arc chooses him to be her standard bearer, so she really like kind of makes a man of him, and yet he still is kind of a buffoon. He provided lots of very funny kind of comic relief. It's so funny to hear the description of Paladin's performances when he recounts a battle he's been in. It was plain that there was a charm about the performance that was apart from the mere interest which attaches to lying. It was presently discoverable that this charm lay in the Paladin's sincerity. He was not lying consciously. He believed what he was saying. To him, his initial statements were facts, and whenever he enlarged a statement, the enlargement became a fact too. He put his heart into his extravagant narrative, just as a poet puts his heart into a heroic fiction, and his earnestness disarmed criticism, disarmed it as far as he himself was concerned. Nobody believed his narrative, but all believed that he believed it. So I just somehow get the feeling that Mark Twain put a lot of himself in the Paladin. And I feel like you can kind of understand his reverence and love for Joan of Arc better when you see the Paladin and Joan of Arc. He was happy and proud and made the most of his wound and went swaggering around in his bandages, showing them off like an innocent big child, which was just what he was. He was prouder of being wounded than a really modest person would be of being killed. But there was no harm in his vanity and nobody minded it. He said he was hit by a stone from a catapult, a stone the size of a man's head, but the stone grew, of course. Before he got through with it, he was claiming that the enemy had flung a building at him. But by the end, the Paladin has earned some respect. Being right under Joan's exalting and transforming eye, he forgot his native prudence. He forgot his diffidence in the presence of danger. He forgot what fear was, and he never laid about him in his imaginary battles in a more tremendous way than he did in this real one. It's hard to pick out quotations to read to you guys because I feel like I marked so many and they're so varied. You have things that Joan of Arc said, like when she's speaking about her vision, she's telling another character, "It isn't a presentiment, it is a fact. And it will not make me miserable. It is uncertainties that do that. But this is not an uncertainty." Just the faith that she has is so beautifully portrayed. But then there are also funny descriptions like of Paladin, or towards the end, Joan's father and uncle are given horses, and like they're also given all these other honors by the court. But for them, it's the horses that stand out the most as like what they're proud of. They could not unglue their minds from those grandeurs, and were always wrenching the conversation out of its groove and dragging the matter of animals into it so that they could say, "My horse here, and my horse there, and yonder, and all around," and taste the words, and lick their chops over them, and spread their legs, and hitch their thumbs in their armpits, and feel as the good God feels when he looks out on his fleets of constellations plowing the awful deeps of space, and reflects with satisfaction that they're his, all his. Well, they were the happiest old children one ever saw, and the simplest. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm so glad that I read it. I would definitely recommend it. Well, I think I'll wrap things up there. Really looking forward to this Friday and our live stream. Chat some more about fabulous summer reads. I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments. What are you reading? What's next up on your list? There is a Tudor-tember and a Shakes-tember, like Shakespeare and also Tudor period. So I feel like I would be fun to read definitely some Shakespeare, but maybe then also a Tudor biography throughout the month of September. Yeah, I'm feeling inspired by my Joan of Arc reading to go deeper into the past. I haven't necessarily read a lot from the medieval period or the Tudor period, but it would be fun to give it a try. If you haven't yet, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed. I'll talk to you guys again soon, and until then, stay bookish. Bye.